Well, so now you are the attorney for Mr. Jack Phillips, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and you represent Alliance Defending Freedom?
I'm an attorney with Alliance
Okay,
Defending Freedom, yes.
okay. Well, very good. So, and the website for Alliance Defending Freedom is adflegal.org. And can you give us just a brief summary of what the organization is dedicated to doing?
Yeah, we are an organization that's been around for almost 25 years, and our primary focus is to defend religious freedom. We also get involved in a lot of issues involving freedom of speech as well.
Okay, very good. Now, I know that Jack's story has got a tremendous amount of attention, and I think for good reason because it goes to the very heart of what it means to live in a free society. In addition to this podcast and a radio show I write columns for Daily Caller and Town Hall, American Conservative, different sites like that. And my focus has always been on trying to get us to understand what it means to live in a free society and how we can recognize the dignity of every person, rather than just trying to use coercion to have our way. And I think the story that Jack Phillips has undergone has a tremendous import for this case, this issue.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I think you're right.
so now with this new situation, the state of Colorado has once again, after the Supreme Court resolved the first issue, now they've come after him again, according to what I've read on the reports, for some kind of a transgender birthday cake. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, so the request came in. To unpack it, it came in sort of. The request came in waves. So the person, this is an attorney. Well, let me back up and start this way.
Okay.
So this is the very day that the media broke the story that the Supreme Court decided to hear Jack Phillips' first case. This is back in the summer of 2017. On that day, an attorney in Colorado heard the news, Googled Masterpiece Cake Shop, got the contact information, called them, indicated that the attorney was looking for a cake with a pink and blue design to celebrate a gender transition. And then Masterpiece Cake Shop indicated that that was not a cake that they were going to be able to create because of the message, but the cake shop offered to sell the attorney something else or to make a different cake for them. Nevertheless, the attorney filed a discrimination complaint against Masterpiece back last summer, and the state of Colorado sat on that for the course of almost an entire year. And then just 24 days after Jack Phillips won his case before the Supreme Court, the state announced that it thought Jack violated the law in declining this pink and blue gender transition celebration cake, and they indicated that they are coming after him again.
Wow. So where is this going to head next? Is going to how does that go forward now? They're going to.
So at this point, Jack felt that he had no choice but to go into federal court and to sue the state officials that enforce this law. So that's what we did on Tuesday night. Filed a federal lawsuit asking the federal court to put an end to the state's continuing harassment of Jack Phillips, and seeking an order that would require them to stop and that would announce that Jack is indeed free to decline to create custom cakes with messages that conflict with his faith. So at this point, we'll wait to see how that case plays out, and then simultaneously we have the state trying to enforce the law and prosecute Jack in a separate, ongoing proceeding in what's known as the Colorado Civil Rights Division and Commission.
Now, from what I've read, was it true that the same person who wanted this cake had also called in to do a Satan cake or something, or what was that about?
Yeah, and so there we're relying on a caller ID that had the same last name, and so all that to say, I think this is probably the broader point. Whether it was the same person or not, it appears that it might be because of the caller ID. But Jack has received at least a handful of requests over the course of the last year for cakes celebrating Satan, for cakes with satanic symbols, for requests to portray drug use, for requests featuring sexually explicit objects and materials. So the fact of the matter is that Jack is receiving a ton of these requests for really many of them absurd messages and images that conflict with his faith, and it's not something he can do. But the key point here is that what the state is doing to Jack is they're essentially empowering people to harass Jack in this way. They by the state itself illustrating that it's going to punish Jack and it's going to harass him whenever he declines to create a cake with a message that conflicts with his faith. It's empowering these private citizens to simply call him up, ask for something crazy that in any way implicates a protected classification under the law, and then file their own harassing complaints or lawsuits against Jack. And so that's why we have to put a stop to this once and for all before it gets out of control.
Yeah, I've often said that there's a role model function that, like it or not, the government plays in our culture, which is that they kind of set the pace for, okay, if you're saying that if this person is a bad guy and you want to use coercion to punish them, that gives me the legitimacy to join in the dog pile in kind of a witch hunt.
Sure.
And I saw reports that his business is at the cake artist business that he runs has even had some kind of physical threats and things like that. Is that correct?
Yes. So over the course of the last 6 years, which is when the first case against him started, they have gone through a lot. I mean, countless hateful and harassing phone calls, at least a handful of death threats. 3 weeks ago, approximately, they had vandalism at the shop with somebody trying to break their window, they think with rocks. They had to install security cameras a couple months ago because of all the harassment and threats. It got so bad that at one point, Jack Phillips's wife told him that she was afraid to set foot in their own shop. So yeah, it's a very unfortunate circumstance, and it's one that the state is not modeling tolerance towards Jack, and therefore the citizens are picking up on that cue, and private folks are not doing the same thing, or are similarly manifesting intolerance towards Jack as well.
Yeah, it sounds horrendous, the idea that people could harass people over such a petty grievance. It's absolutely insane to me. And obviously it's clear that whatever groupthink is motivating these aggressive people is not love, but hate. It's clear that that's hate that's driving people to treat people over such a ridiculous disagreement of opinion.
Right.
But what you're talking about now, it strikes at the very core of freedom of association and private property and free speech. So are all these things, are you advancing that case on all those, or just one, like expression, or how are you going forward?
Yeah, we're focusing on free exercise of religion and freedom of expression at this point. We're also raising equal protection claims, because one of the things to keep in mind here is that just approximately 2 months ago, the Supreme Court looked at Jack's first case and found in no uncertain terms that the state was acting with hostility towards him because the state didn't like his faith. And one of the things that the Supreme Court pointed to in that regard was the fact that they were treating Jack differently than other cake artists. So you had 3 bakers in the state that were asked to create cakes with messages criticizing same-sex marriage. They declined, and they were allowed to do that. But whenever Jack declines a requested cake because he disagrees with the message, in his first case, a message supporting same-sex marriage, and in the second case, a message celebrating a gender transition, he's punished by the state. The state tries to prosecute him. So that unequal treatment can only be explained one way, and that's because the state is hostile to Jack and his beliefs, and so it's singling out and targeting him, and that is why we're trying to put an end to it.
So do we have any idea of why they're targeting him specifically? That's very strange.
It's just the state officials charged with enforcing this law do not like the nature of his beliefs and do not like the way in which he's trying to live out his faith. In other words, he's trying to live out his faith as part of his business. And so for whatever reason, if a cake artist has a objection to a message and the state officials also have the same objection to the message, then they're allowing that to happen. But in Jack's case, of course, the state officials don't have a problem with the messages that Jack would rather not help to celebrate and endorse, and so they're punishing Jack when he declines to do that.
Wow, that's insane. So now, why were the other people of different religions, or why did they get a pass? I just don't understand that.
Yeah, I guess again the underlying they were so this is probably the simplest way to say it. The other folks were asked to create a message criticizing same-sex marriage. They said no. Jack was asked to create a message celebrating same-sex marriage. He said no. So the difference in treatment is because the government likes the message that the first set of folks were asked to do. In other words, because they would have rejected the message, maybe that's a good way to put it, because the state officials would have declined to create a message criticizing same-sex marriage. They're sympathetic to those bakers. But because they disagree with Jack's decision to decline to celebrate same-sex marriage, they're punishing him.
And what I hate about these vindictive people is that, it's like if you want to have that kind of celebration, right? Why would you want to, patronize a business that doesn't have the same opinions on that? Why wouldn't you just go to a baker or someone or an artist who, would gladly go along with your message? Why do you need to force someone to submit to you by coercion? That's just the part of the issue here, it seems to me.
Absolutely, particularly when you're talking about the wedding cake, right? So the process of making a wedding cake is you sit down, you talk, you dialogue, you basically collaborate on this creative project to come up with something that ultimately is going to celebrate what is, for most people, one of the most important days of their lives. So why in the world would you want to enlist someone to help you with that when they're in a position that they just simply cannot put their heart and soul into it because of their religious conviction or because of some other conviction?
Right. And it's stuff that, it's just like typical bullies. They want to work in a group, so they have to go through the state because aside from those outliers that have been harassing him personally, people really don't want to come to grips with the responsibility they have when they want to go along with trying to force someone to do something that is against their conscience. That is what's at the heart of this, and I can't even imagine how this is not going to be a slam dunk win against this message, because it's so outrageous. It has nothing to do with the American principles that we should all abide by, which is that you don't use the threat of violence to get someone to change their behaviors that conflict with their conscience, especially when it's artist's expression,
Yep.
So what can we do to help you get the word out going forward? I'm going to be staying abreast of this topic and keeping up with what happens. I'll be educating people along the way in my circles. Tell us how we can help get the word out, or what we can do, some of the take-home messages that we can share about the essential importance of this case.
Yeah. I think, a number of things come to mind. We have already some materials up on our website, and we'll be continuing to put more materials. We have short videos. You can link to those. We have one-page summaries. We have the lawsuit that we filed. We've published op-eds. The Wall Street Journal editorial board put out an op-ed in support of Jack Phillips on this very case today. And so there's a lot of stuff to link to. There's a lot of good material out there. So however you can, just press that out, make folks aware of it. And the bottom line is, if anyone is worried about government vendettas, government crusades against particular people because they don't like their beliefs, which I think all of us should be worried about that, then we all need to come alongside folks like Jack Phillips who are facing that very thing right now. And we need to say enough is enough. We're not going to stand for it, and we're going to push back against governmental bullying.
Right. That's what this comes down to. This is about violence versus freedom. This is really what it's all about. So you don't have the right, and this is what I teach in my it's just like with the story of Jesus, who's going to cast the first stone? You don't have a right to throw a stone at someone because you hate their opinion about something. You have the right to leave them alone They're not hurting you. They're not trying to defraud you. They're not trying to steal anything from you. They're not trying to coerce you. Okay? You have no right to touch a single hair on their head or threaten anything of such to hurt their business. It's just not going to happen in a real society of civilized people who don't fall to barbarity. This is what this is about. These are just people who are stuck on barbarity and brutish vulgarity, and they have no place to have their attempts of coercion treated in any kind of dignified, civilized society. So I'm best of luck to what you're doing, and I want to do whatever I can to help get the word out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, folks, so you can go to adflegal.org and look at what's going on with the story of Jack Phillips in Colorado, fighting for freedom of expression. And thank you, Jim, for coming on the program. I wish you best of luck, okay?
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, thank you. We'll talk soon.